for the Crucible Act 1. Let's get back to presenting that side of the screen. All right. So, Proctor was a farmer in his middle 30s. He need not have been a partisan of any faction in the town, but there is evidence to suggest that he had a sharp and biting way about hypocrites. He was the kind of man, powerful of body, even-tempered and not easily led, who cannot refuse support to partisans without drawing their deepest resentment. In Proctor's presence, a fool felt his foolishness instantly, and a Proctor is always marked for calumny, therefore. So he tried not to take sides in the disputes, but still got drawn into it for various reasons. But as we shall see, the steady manner he displays does not spring from an untroubled soul. He is a sinner not only against the moral fashion of the time, but against his own vision of decent conduct. So we have a character here, a very important character, who has gone against his own moral code and his suffering for that. You might already have concluded how he's broken his moral code, particularly with regards to Abigail, but we'll get to that in a bit. It is another trait we inherited from them, and it has helped to discipline us as well, to breed hypocrisy among us. Proctor, respected and even feared in Salem, has come to regard himself as a kind of fraud, but no hint of this has yet appeared on the surface. And as he enters from the crowded parlor below, it is a man in his prime we see, with a quiet confidence and an unexpressed hidden force. Mary Warren, his servant, can barely speak for embarrassment and fear. Mary Warren. Oh, I'm just going home, Mr. Proctor. Proctor. Be you foolish, Mary Warren? Be you deaf? I forbid you to leave the house, did I not? Why shall I pay you? I am looking for you more often than my cows. Mary Warren. I only come to see the great doings in the world. Proctor. I'll show you a great doing on your behind one of these days. Now get you home. My wife is waiting with your work. Trying to retain a shred of dignity, she goes out slowly. Mercy Lewis, both afraid of him and strangely titillated. I'd best be off. I have my Ruth to watch. Good morning, Mr. Proctor. Mercy sidles out. Since Proctor's entrance, Abigail has stood as though on tiptoe. Absorbing his presence, wide-eyed, he glances at her, then goes to Betty on the bed. Abigail. Gah, I almost forgot how strong you are, John Proctor. Proctor, looking at Abigail now, the faintest suggestion of a knowing smile on his face. What's this mischief here? Abigail, with a nervous laugh. Oh, she's only gone silly somehow. Proctor, the road past my house is a pilgrimage to Salem all morning. The town's mumbling witchcraft. Abigail, oh, posh. Winningly, she comes a little closer with a confidential, wicked air. We were dancing in the woods last night, and my uncle leapt in on us. She took fright is all. Proctor, his smile widening. Oh, you're wicked yet, aren't you? A trill of expectant laughter escapes her, and she dares come closer, feverishly looking into his eyes. You'll be clapped in the stocks before you're 20. He takes a step to go, and she springs into his path. Abigail, give me a word, John, a soft word. Her concentrated desire destroys his smile. Proctor, no, Abby, that's done with. Abigail, tauntingly, you come 5 miles to see a silly girl fly? I know you better. Proctor, setting her firmly out of his path. I come to see what mischief your uncle's brewing now, with final emphasis. Put it out of mind, Abby. Abigail, grasping his hand before he can release her. John, I'm waiting for you every night. Proctor, Abby, I never give you hope to wait for me. Abigail, now beginning to anger. She can't believe it. I have something better than hope, I think. Proctor, Abby, you'll put it out of mind. I'll not be coming for you more. Abigail, you're surely sporting with me. Proctor, you know me better. Abigail, I know how you clutched. Whoa, I don't know that I want to read that part. Yeah, I'm not reading that part out loud. Basically, Abigail says that she slept with Proctor. Says so, yep. And I'm not saying that part out loud. No, just just read that part in the book. Yeah. Proctor says, Abby, that's a wild thing to say. Abigail, a wild thing may say wild things, but not so wild, I think. I have seen you since she put me out. I have seen you nights. Proctor, I have hardly stepped off my farm this 7 month. Abigail, I have a sense for heat, John, and yours has drawn me to my window, and I have seen you looking up, burning in your loneliness. Do you tell me you never looked up at my window? Proctor, I may have looked up. Abigail, now softening, and you must. You are no wintry man. I know you, John. I know you. She is weeping. So I have to weep, I guess. I cannot sleep for dreaming. I cannot dream, but I wake and walk about the house as though I'd find you coming through some door. She clutches him desperately. Proctor gently pressing her from him with great sympathy but firmly. Child. Abigail with a flash of anger. How do you call me, child? Proctor. Abby, I think of you softly from time to time, but I will cut off my hand before I reach for you again. Wipe it out of mind. We never touched, Abby. Abigail. Aye, but we did. Proctor. Aye, but we did not. Abigail with bitter anger. Oh, I marvel how such a strong man may let such a sickly wife be. Proctor angered at himself as well as her. You'll speak nothing of Elizabeth. Abigail. She is blackening my name in the village. She is telling lies about me. She is a cold, sniffling woman. You bend to her, let her turn like a... Proctor shaking her. Do you look for a whipping? So let's pause here for a moment. Basically, Abigail and Proctor, admittedly, straight out here, slept together once. Probably why she was fired from the Proctor household, probably why Mrs. Proctor will not be in the same church as her. Yeah. And Abigail's tactic here is, hey, let's do that again. And Proctor's like, no. In fact, let's pretend it never happened at all. That's just a terrible idea. Regret doing it. That was a bad idea. That was a mistake. Moral failing. And no. Just saying no to doing that again. Indeed. So they are of different minds on this matter. A lot. Continuing. A psalm is heard being sung below. Abigail in tears. I look for John. Whoa. This is going to be awkward reading this part. I look for John Proctor that took me from my sleep and put knowledge in my heart. I never knew what pretense Salem was. I never knew the lying lessons I was taught by all these Christian women and their covenanted men. And now you bid me tear the light out of my eyes? I will not, I cannot. You loved me, John Proctor, and whatever sin it is, you love me yet. He turns abruptly to go out. She rushes to him. John, pity me, pity me. The words going up to Jesus are heard in the psalm. There's like music in the background. It's a play. And Betty claps her ears suddenly and whines loudly. Abigail. Betty? She hurries to Betty, who is now sitting up and screaming. Proctor goes to Betty as Abigail is trying to pull her hands down, calling, Betty. Proctor, growing unnerved. What's she doing? Girl, what ails you? Stop that wailing. The singing has stopped in the midst of this, and now Paris rushes in. They must be very close to the church. Paris. What happened? What are you doing to her? Betty? He rushes to the bed, crying, Betty, Betty! Mrs. Putnam enters, feverish with curiosity. And with her Thomas Putnam and Mercy Lewis, Paris at the bed keeps lightly slapping Betty's face while she moans and tries to get up. Abigail. She heard you singing and suddenly she's up and screaming. Mrs. Putnam. The psalm, the psalm. She cannot bear to hear the Lord's name. Paris. No, God forbid. Mercy, run to the doctor. Tell him what happened here. Mercy Lewis rushes out. Mrs. Putnam. Mark it for a sign. Mark it. So what they're saying here is Betty, Reverend Paris's daughter, freaked out when she heard Christian songs coming from the church nearby, and that's probably a sign that there's witchcraft involved. Um, they are taking that as evidence of witchcraft. Very concerned about that. Rebecca Nurse, another new character, 72 years old, enters. She is white-haired, leaning upon a walking stick. Putnam, pointing at the whimpering Betty. That is a notorious sign of witchcraft afoot. Goody Nurse, again, Mrs. Nurse. A prodigious sign, Mrs. Putnam. My mother told me that, when they cannot bear to hear the name of... Paris, trembling. Rebecca, go to her. We're lost. She suddenly cannot bear to hear the Lord's... Giles Corey, new character. Everybody's just poking their nose in everybody's business here. Giles Corey, 83 years old, enters. He is knotted with muscle, canny, inquisitive, and still powerful. Rebecca, there's a hard sickness here, Giles Corey, so please to keep the quiet. Giles, I've not said a word. No one here can testify I've said a word. Is she going to fly again? I hear she flies. Putnam, man, be quiet now. So the rumor of children flying on broomsticks and whatnot through the air is just all over the town now. For a town with no phone or internet or anything or texting, the rumor is flying fast all the same. That's the thing that's flying, rumor. Everything is quiet. Rebecca walks across the room to the bed. Gentleness exudes from her. Betty is simply whimpering, eyes shut. Rebecca stands over the child, who gradually quiets. And while they are so absorbed, we may put a word in for Rebecca. Narrator again telling us about stuff. Rebecca was the wife of Francis Nurse, who, from all accounts, was one of those men for whom both sides of the argument had to have respect. He was called upon to arbitrate disputes as though he were an unofficial judge, and Rebecca also enjoyed the high opinion of most people had for him. By the time of their delusion, they had 300 acres, and their children were settled in separate homesteads within the same estate. However, Francis had originally rented the land, and one theory has it that as he gradually paid for it and raised his social status, there were those who resented his rise. Another suggestion to explain the systematic campaign against Rebecca, and inferentially against Francis, is the land war he fought with his neighbors, one of whom was a Putnam. So it's back to land again, not so much witchcraft as land, money, old grudges. This squabble grew to the proportions of a battle in the woods between partisans of both sides, and it is said to have lasted for 2 days. As for Rebecca herself, the general opinion of her character was so high that to explain how anyone dared cry out for a witch, and more, how adults could bring themselves to lay hands on her, we must look to the fields and boundaries of that time. As we have seen, Thomas Putnam's man for the Salem ministry was Bailey. The Nurse clan had been in a faction that prevented Bailey's taking office. In addition, certain families allied to the Nurses by blood or friendship, and can't read that word. And those who were contiguous with the Nurse farm or close to it combined to break away from the Salem town authority and set up Topsfield, a new and independent entity whose existence was resented by old Salemites. That the guiding hand behind the outcry was Putnam's is indicated by the fact that as soon as it began, the Topsfield Nurse faction absented themselves from church in protest and disbelief. It was Edward and Jonathan Putnam who signed the first complaint against Rebecca, and Thomas Putnam's little daughter was the one who fell into a fit at the hearing and pointed to Rebecca as her attacker. To top it all off, Mrs. Putnam, who is now staring at the bewitched child on the bed, soon accused Rebecca, a spirit, of tempting her to iniquity, a charge that had more truth in it than Mrs. Putnam could know. Continuing with the play. Mrs. Putnam, astonished. What have you done? Rebecca, in thought, now leaves the bedside and sits. Paris, wondrous and relieved. What do you make of it, Rebecca? Putnam, eagerly. Goody Nurse, will you go to my Ruth and see if you can wake her? Rebecca, sitting. I think she'll wake in time. Pray calm yourself. I have 11 children, and I am 26 times a grandma. And I have seen them all through their silly seasons. And when it comes on them, they will run the devil bow-legged, keeping up with their mischief. I think she'll wake when she tires of it. A child's spirit is like a child. You can never catch it by running after it. You must stand still, and for love, it will soon come back. Proctor. Aye, that's the truth of it, Rebecca. Mrs. Putnam. This is no silly season, Rebecca. My Ruth is bewildered. Rebecca, she cannot eat. Rebecca, perhaps she is not hungered yet. So notice Rebecca's making jokes. Putnam's like, my daughter's got a curse on her. She can't eat. It's magic. And Rebecca says she'll eat when she's hungry. That's, bottom line. Rebecca seemed to be more down to earth in this, which the people that were more down to earth didn't tend to fare well in this event. Perhaps she is not hungered yet. To Paris. I hope you are not decided to go in search of loose spirits, Mr. Paris. I've heard promise of that outside. So Rebecca's hoping that he will not be looking for witches and ghosts and that he'll be a little more grounded. Don't know how that's going to go. Not going to go well. Paris. A wide opinion's running in the parish that the devil may be among us, and I would satisfy them that they are wrong. Now, in this time, they would be very literal about that. They're saying that the devil was literally in the woods nearby, and people are going, meeting him, talking to him, and signing their name in his book. That's how it worked back then. You signed your name physically in a book. That's what they thought. Proctor. Then let you come out and call them wrong. Did you consult the wardens before you called this minister to look for devils? Paris. He is not coming to look for devils. Proctor. Then what's he coming for? Putnam. There be children dying in the village, mister. Proctor. I see none dying. This society will not be a bag to swing around your head, Mr. Putnam. To Paris. Did you call a meeting before you? Putnam. I am sick of meetings. Cannot a man turn his head without he have a meeting? Proctor. He may turn his head, but not to hell. Rebecca. Pray, John, be calm. Pause. He defers to her. Mr. Paris, I think you'd best send Reverend Hale back as soon as he gets here. This will set us all to arguing again in a society, and we thought to have peace this year. I think we ought to rely on the doctor now, and good prayer. Mrs. Putnam. Rebecca, the doctor's baffled. Rebecca. If so he is, then let us go to God for the cause of it. There's a prodigious danger in the seeking of loose spirits, I fear. I fear it. Let us rather blame ourselves and Putnam. How may we blame ourselves? Sounds like someone that's never taken the blame for something in his life. I am one of 9 sons. The Putnam seed have peopled this province, and yet I have but 1 child left of 8. And now she shrivels. Again, the Putnams, remember, lots of miscarriages. The only thing they can think to blame is witchcraft. Not a lot of knowledge of medicine back then or why any of these things happened, so witchcraft. Gotta be. Rebecca. I cannot fathom that. Mrs. Putnam, with a growing edge of sarcasm. But I must. You think it's God's work you should never lose a child? Nor grandchild either? And I bury all but 1? There are wheels within wheels in this village and fires within fires. So Mrs. Putnam is suggesting that because she's had all the miscarriages and Rebecca and such have had no miscarriages, maybe they're in league with the witches. Maybe they are witches. That's how they avoided the miscarriages. They're the witches with the devil and evil. That's the logic here. Putnam, to Paris. When Reverend Hale comes, you will proceed to look for signs of witchcraft here. Proctor to Putnam. You cannot command Mr. Paris. We vote by name in this society, not by acreage. So Proctor's telling Putnam, hey, now, just because you got a lot of land and you're rich doesn't mean you're in charge. We vote here, supposedly. Putnam, I never heard you worried on this society, Mr. Proctor, and I do not think I saw you at Sabbath meeting since snow flew. So in this society, you can call someone out for not going to church every Sunday. He's like, you know what, Proctor? Haven't seen you at church, so you're in trouble for that. Proctor says, I have trouble enough without. I come 5 miles to hear him preach only hellfire and bloody damnation. Take it to heart, Mr. Paris. There are many others who stay away from church these days because you hardly ever mention God anymore. So Proctor is complaining that he doesn't come to church, not because he's left the faith or anything, but because the preacher, Paris, seems to only preach about hell and not enough about God, and he's kind of tired of hearing that. Wants to hear some good things, good news, upbeat stuff. Paris, now aroused. Why? What? That's a drastic change. Rebecca. It's somewhat true. There are many that quail to bring their children. Paris. I do not preach for children. Rebecca. It is not the children who are unmindful of their obligations towards this ministry. So Paris isn't taking criticism well at all. He's been told, preaches too much about hell, not enough about good stuff. And he's like, well, tough. That's the way it's going to be. Rebecca. Are there really those unmindful? Paris. I should say the better half of Salem Village, Putnam, and more than that. Paris. Where is my wood? Where is my wood? My contract provides I will be supplied with all my firewood. I am waiting since November for a stick, and even in November I had to show my frostbitten hands like some London beggar. So Paris, the Reverend, is supposed to be paid a certain amount by the village, including allotment of firewood. He's complaining, I didn't get paid. You're not paying me like you said you would. You're not giving me firewood like you said I would. So half of y'all must be sinners for that. Giles. You are allowed £6 a year to buy your wood, Mr. Paris. Paris. I regard that £6 as part of my salary. I am paid little enough without I spend £6 on firewood. Proctor. 60 plus 6 for firewood, Proctor says. So Proctor's saying, no, you don't get £6 a year. You get £60 a year for your salary plus 6 for the firewood. Paris, the salary is £66, Mr. Proctor. So Paris is changing the story. £66. I am not some preaching farmer with a book under my arm. I am a graduate of Harvard College. Guess it was just Harvard College back then. Giles, I and well instructed in arithmetic. Making fun of him for all that money or all that attention to money. He's like, yeah, you definitely went to Harvard. You've got a good, you've got it pretty well down how much you should be paid. Paris, Mr. Corey, you will look for a man of my kind at £60 a year. I am not used to this kind of poverty. I left a thrifty business in the Barbados to serve the Lord. I do not fathom it. Why am I persecuted here? I cannot offer one proposition, but there be a howling riot of argument. I have often wondered if the devil be in it somewhere. I can't understand you people otherwise. So again, Paris is saying, because you guys aren't paying me that well, you guys must be in league with the devil. Something like that. Interesting. Proctor, Mr. Paris, you are the first minister ever did demand the deed to his house. Paris, man, don't a minister deserve a house to live in? Proctor, to live in, yes, but to ask ownership is like you shall own the meeting house itself. The last meeting I were at, you spoke so long on deeds and mortgages, I thought it were an auction. So apparently it's a trend for Paris to not only talk about hell, but to talk about money. Money a lot in his sermons. It's also interesting. Paris says, I want to mark a confidence is all. I am your third preacher in 7 years. I do not wish to be put out like a cat whenever some majority feels the whim. You people seem not to comprehend that a minister is the Lord's man. In the parish, a minister is not to be so lightly crossed and contradicted. Putnam, aye. Paris, there is either obedience or the church will burn like hell is burning. So pay him, treat him well, or you guys are all in league with the devil. This is the two options you have here in this with Paris. Proctor, can you speak 1 minute without we land in hell again? I am sick of hell. Paris, it is not for you to say what is good for you to hear. Proctor, I will speak my heart, I think. Paris, in a fury, so I have to be very furious when I say this. What, are we Quakers? We are not Quakers in here yet, Mr. Proctor, and you may tell that to your followers. Proctor, my followers? Paris, now he's out with it. There is a party in this church. I am not blind. There is a faction and a party. He means like a political group, a party following Proctor, not a party like everybody's got a cake and celebrating or something. Proctor, against you? Putnam, against him and all his authority. Proctor, why then? I must find it and join it. So Proctor is, again, he hates stupid people. He hates dishonest people, corrupt people, and he doesn't hide it. If someone's foolish, dishonest, corrupt, he's going to call him out on it, and people typically hate him for that. And he's calling out Reverend Paris, and he does not like that at all. There is a shock among the others. Rebecca, he does not mean that. Putnam, he confessed it just now. Proctor, I mean it solemnly, Rebecca. I like not the smell of this authority. Rebecca, no, you cannot break charity with your minister. You are another kind, John. Clasp his hand. Make your peace. Proctor, I have a crop to sow and lumber to drag on. It's like, I've got work to do. I don't have time to be flattering people and lying to them to make them feel better. So he goes angrily to the door and turns to Corey with a smile. What say you, Giles? Let's find the party. He says there's a party. Still joking about it. Giles, I've changed my opinion of this man, John. Mr. Paris, I beg your pardon. I never thought you had so much iron in you. Paris, surprised. Why, thank you, Giles. Giles, it suggests to the mind what the trouble be among us these years to all. Think on it. Wherefore is everybody suing everybody else? Think on it now. It's a deep thing, and as dark as a pit. I have been 6 times in court this year. Proctor, familiarly with warmth, although he knows he is approaching the edge of Giles' tolerance with this. Is it the devil's fault that a man cannot say you good morning without you clap him for defamation? You're old, Giles, and you're not hearing so well as you did. So apparently Giles takes people to court a lot to try to sue them. I thought that was just a 20th century thing. Apparently that's been going on for as long as America. I did not know that was a thing back then. Interesting. Giles, he cannot be crossed. John Proctor, I have only last month collected £4 damages for you publicly saying I burned the roof off your house. Notice £4 damages for someone saying something. Hard to say what money was worth back then, but we just found out that Reverend Paris was getting £66 a year as his salary for being a minister, which includes his firewood allotment. £4 out of 66 is about 6% of the salary. 6% of one's annual salary for saying something out loud. Don't know if I did the math correctly there, but that sounds like a lot. Proctor, laughing. I never said no such thing, but I've paid you for it, so I hope I can call you deaf without charge. Now come along, Giles, and help me drag my lumber home. So Proctor seems like a pretty forgiving guy. I mean, this old guy, Giles, sued him for money. Proctor paid him, but he still pals around with him, so that's cool. Not everybody would be that forgiving. Putnam, a moment, Mr. Proctor. What lumber is it you're dragging, if I may ask you? Proctor, my lumber from my own forest by my riverside. Putnam, why, we are surely gone wild this year. What anarchy is this? That tract is in my bounds. It's in my bounds, Mr. Proctor. Proctor, in your bounds, indicating to Rebecca. I bought that tract of land from Goody Nurse's husband 5 months ago. Putnam, he had no right to sell it. Stands clear in my grandfather's will that all the land between the river and Proctor, your grandfather had a habit of willing land that never belonged to him. And if I may say it plain, Giles, that's the God's honest truth. He nearly willed away my north pasture, but he knew I'd break his fingers before he'd set his name to it. Let's get your lumber home, John. I feel a sudden will to work coming on. Putnam, you load one oak of mine and you'll fight to drag it home. Giles, I will win too. Putnam, this fool and I. Come on. He turns to Proctor and starts out. Putnam, I'll have my men on you, Corey. I'll clap a writ on you. So this again shows us that witchcraft isn't the only business going on here. Big disputes going on for years and years beyond this over land. Putnam says, that's my land. Proctor says, no, it's mine. I bought it from this other family. It was never yours. But Putnam's greedy, wants land, wants more land. And might just be willing to accuse someone of witchcraft later to get it, but we'll see. And finally, the summoned for Reverend John Hale of Beverly enters the scene, called here by Reverend Paris to look into the witchcraft claims and to help his daughters and figure out what's going on. We get more block of narration by the author narrator. Mr. Hale is nearly 40, a tight-skinned, eager-eyed intellectual. He is a beloved errand This is a beloved errand for him, one being called here to ascertain witchcraft. He felt the pride of the specialist whose unique knowledge has at last been publicly called for. Like almost all men of learning, he spent a good deal of his time pondering the invisible world, especially since he had himself encountered a witch in his parish not long before. That woman, however, turned into a mere pest under his searching scrutiny, and the child she had allegedly been afflicting recovered her normal behavior after Hale had given her his kindness and a few days of rest in his own house. However, that experience never raised a doubt in his mind as to the reality of the underworld or the existence of Lucifer's many-faced lieutenants. And his belief is not to his discredit. Better minds than Hale's were and still are convinced that there is a society of spirits beyond our ken. One cannot help noting that one of his lines has never yet raised a laugh in any audience that has seen this play. It is his assurance that we cannot look to superstition in this. The devil is precise. Evidently, we are not quite certain even now whether diabolism is holy or not, and not to be scoffed at. And it is no accident that we should be so bemused. Like Reverend Hale and the others on this stage, we believe the devil as a necessary part of a respectable view of cosmology. Ours is the divided empire in which certain ideas and emotions and actions are of God and their opposites are of Lucifer. It is as impossible for most men to conceive of a morality without sin as of an earth without sky. Since 1692, a great but superficial change has wiped out God's beard and the devil's horns. But the world is still gripped between two diametrically opposite absolutes. The concept of unity, in which positive and negative are attributes of the same force, in which good and evil are relative, ever-changing, and always joined to the same phenomenon. Such concept is still reserved to the physical sciences and to the few who have grasped the history of ideas. When it is recalled that until the Christian era, the underworld was never regarded as a hostile area, that all gods were useful and essentially friendly to man, despite occasional lapses, when we see the steady and methodical inculcation into humanity of the idea of man's worthlessness, until redeemed, the necessity of the devil may become evident as a weapon designed and used in time again in every age to whip men into surrender to a particular church or church state. Remember, this is the author narrator speaking. I'm just reading it out loud. Mr. Valentine states no opinions on religion or politics while he is your teacher at Charles V. Aycock High School. This is the narrator talking. Our difficulty in believing the, for want of a better word, political inspiration of the devil is due in great part to the fact that he is called up and damned not only by our social antagonists, but by our own side, whatever it may be. The Catholic Church, thought through its Inquisition, is famous for cultivating Lucifer as the arch-fiend. But the Church's enemies relied no less upon the old boy to keep the human mind enthralled. Luther was himself accused of alliance with hell, and he in turn accused his enemies. To complicate matters further, he believed that he had had contact with the devil and had argued theology with him. That's interesting. I'll have to read wherever that source material is someday. I am not surprised at this, for at my own university, a professor of history, a Lutheran by the way, used to assemble his graduate students, draw the shades, and commune in the classroom with Erasmus. He was never, to my knowledge, officially scoffed at for this, the reason being that the university officials, like most of us, are the children of a history which still sucks. I'm not reading the rest of that sentence. Still believes in the devil. Let's just paraphrase the sentence that way. At this writing, only England is held back before the temptations of contemporary diabolism. In the countries of the communist ideology, all resistance of any import is linked to the totally malign capitalists, succubi. Where are we going with this? And in America, any man who is not reactionary in his views is open to the charge of alliance with the red hell. Political opposition, therefore, thereby, is given an inhumane overlay which then justifies the abrogation of all normally applied customs of civilized intercourse. A political party is equated with moral right, and opposition to it with diabolical malevolence. One such an equation is effectively made, society becomes a conjury of plots and counterplots, and the main role of government changes from that of the arbiter to that of the scourge of God. The results of this process are no different now from what they ever were, except sometimes in the degree of cruelty inflicted, not always even in that department. Normally, the actions and deeds of a man were all that society felt comfortable in judging. The secret intent of the action was left to the ministers, priests, and rabbis to deal with. When diabolism rises, however, actions are the least important manifests of the true nature of the man. The devil, as Reverend Hale has said, is a wily one, and until an hour before he fell, even God thought him beautiful in heaven. The narrator likes to talk a lot here. Personally, I prefer the dramatic parts of the drama, the play parts of the play, but best to read everything, just in case. Have a little V8 there. Okay. The analogy, however, seems to falter when one considers that while there are no witches then, there are communists and capitalists now. And in each camp, there is certain proof that spies of each side are at work undermining the other. But this is a snobbish objection and not at all warranted by the facts. I have no doubt that people were communing with and even worshiping the devil in Salem. And if the whole truth would be known in this case, as it is in others, we should discover a regular and conventionalized propitiation of the dark spirit. One certain evidence of this is the confession that Tituba, the slave of Reverend Paris, and another is the behavior of the children who are known to have indulged in sorceries with her. Seems to be that the narrator is saying that maybe there was some witchcraft, maybe there wasn't. Probably a little. Hard to say at this point. Hard to know for sure. There are accounts of similar clatches in Europe where the daughters of the towns would assemble at night and sometimes with fetishes, sometimes with a selected young man, give themselves to love with some unfortunate results. Not saying that word. The church, sharp-eyed as it must be when gods long dead are brought to life, condemned these events as witchcraft and interrupted them rightly. As a resurgence of the Dionysiac forces it had crushed long before. Sex, sin, and the devil were early linked, and so they continue to be in Salem and are today. From all accounts, there are no more puritanical mores in the world than those enforced by the communists in Russia, where women's fashions, for instance, are as prudent and all-covering as any American Baptist would desire. The divorce laws lay a tremendous responsibility on the father for the care of his children. Even the laxity of divorce regulations in the early years of the Revolution was undoubtedly a revulsion from the 19th century Victorian immobility of marriage and the consequent hypocrisy that developed from it. If for no other reason, a state so powerful, so jealous of the uniformity of its citizens, cannot long tolerate the atomization of the family. And yet, in American eyes at least, there remains the conviction that the Russian attitude towards women is lascivious. It is the devil working again, just as he is working within the Slav who is shocked at the very idea of a woman's disrobing herself in the burlesque show. Narrator still going, still the narrator. Our opposites are always robed in sexual sin, and it is from this unconscious conviction that demonology gains both its attractive sensuality and its capacity to infuriate and frighten. Almost done with the narration. Almost. One more paragraph. Coming into Salem now, Reverend Hale conceives of himself much as a young doctor on his first call. His painfully acquired armory of symptoms, catchwords, and diagnostic procedures is now to be put to use at last. The road from Beverly is unusually busy this morning, and he has passed 100 rumors that make him smile at the ignorance of the yeomanry in this most precise science. He feels himself allied with the best minds of Europe, kings, philosophers, scientists, and ecclesiasts of all churches. His goal is light, goodness, and the preservation, and he knows the exaltation of the blessed, whose intelligence, sharpened by minute examinations of enormous tracts, is finally called upon to face what may be a bloody fight with the fiend himself. Narrator finally stops. We're back to the play. He appears loaded down with half a dozen heavy books. Hale, pray you, someone take these. Paris, delighted. Mr. Hale, oh, it is good to see you again. Taking some books. My, they're heavy. Hale, setting down his books. They must be. They are weighted with heavy authority. Paris, a little scared. Well, you do come prepared. Hale, we shall need hard study if it comes to tracking down the old boy. The old boy is a euphemism for Satan in this case. Noticing Rebecca. You cannot be Rebecca Nurse. Rebecca. I am, sir. Do you know me? Hale. It is strange how I knew you, but I suppose you look as such a good soul should. We have all heard of your great charities in Beverly. Paris. Do you know this gentleman? Mr. Thomas Putnam and his good wife, Anne. So they're all introducing Reverend Hale to the villagers and the villagers to him. Hale, Putnam. I had not expected such distinguished company, sir. Putnam, pleased. It does not seem to help us today, Mr. Hale. We look to you to come to our house and save our child. Hale, your child ails too? Mrs. Putnam, her soul seems flown away. She sleeps, and yet she walks. So sleepwalking is apparently also a sign of the devil here. Sleepwalking. Putnam, she cannot eat. If you can't eat, it's the devil. Hale, cannot eat. Thinks on it. Then to Proctor and Giles Corey. Do you men have afflicted children? Paris, no, these are farmers. John Proctor, Giles Corey. He don't believe in witches. Had to say that out loud, didn't he? Proctor to Hale. I never spoke on witches one way or the other. Will you come, Giles? Giles, no, John, I think not. I have some few queer questions of my own to ask this fellow. Proctor, I've heard you to be a sensible man, Mr. Hale. I hope you'll leave some of it in Salem. Proctor goes. He's got work to do, as you recall. Hale stands embarrassed for an instant. Paris, quickly. Will you look at my daughter, sir? Leads Hale to the bed. She has tried to leap out of the window. We discovered her this morning on the high road, waving her arms as though she'd fly. Hale, narrowing his eyes, tries to fly? Putnam, she cannot bear to hear the Lord's name. Because remember earlier, they had a church song and she tried to leap out the window. So one must have caused the other in their minds. Mr. Hale, that's a sure sign of witchcraft afloat. Hale, boldening, holding up his hands. No, let me instruct you. We cannot look to superstition in this. The devil is precise. The marks of his presence are definite as stone. And I must tell you all that I shall not proceed unless you are prepared to believe me if I should find no bruise of hell upon her. So it's like, all right, let's not be superstitious now. I've got some exact methods of looking for witches. Might not even be any witches here. Got to be exact and precise. Got to follow these rock hard procedures here. Not superstitious procedures, as yeah. Paris, it is agreed, sir. It is agreed. We will abide by your judgment. Hale, good then. He goes to the bed, looks down at Betty. To Paris, now, sir, what were your first warnings of this strangeness? Paris, why, sir, I discovered her, indicating Abigail, and my niece and 10 or 12 of the other girls in the village dancing in the forest last night. Dancing in the forest. See, they didn't really dance a lot in this culture. Frowned upon to go dancing in any sense. So dancing's the devil. No dancing. Hale, surprised. You permit dancing? He's very shocked at this. Paris, no, it were in secret. Mrs. Putnam, unable to wait. Mr. Paris's slave has knowledge of conjuring, sir. Paris to Mrs. Putnam. We cannot be sure of that, Goody Anne. Mrs. Putnam, frightened, very softly. I know it, sir. I sent my child. She should learn from Tituba, who murdered her sisters. Rebecca, horrified. Goody Anne, you sent a child to conjure up the dead? Mrs. Putnam. Let God blame me, not you. Not you, Rebecca. I'll not have you judging me any more. To Reverend Hale. It is a natural work to lose 7. Sorry, I misspoke. Is it natural work to lose 7 children before they live a day? So again, blames her miscarriages on witchcraft. She's very certain of it. Paris. Shh. Tries to silence her. Rebecca, with great pain, turns her face away. There is a pause. Hale. 7 dead in childbirth. Mrs. Putnam, softly. Aye. Her voice breaks. She looks up to him. Silence. Hale is impressed. Paris looks to him. He goes to his books, opens one, turns pages, then reads. All wait avidly. Paris, hushed. What book is that? Mrs. Putnam. What's there, sir? Hale, with a tasty love of intellectual pursuit. That's an interesting phrasing. Here is all the invisible world, caught, defined, calculated. In these books, the devil stands stripped of all his brute disguises. Here are all your familiar spirits, your incubi and your succubi, your witches that go by land, by air, or by sea, your wizards of the night and of the day. Have no fear now, we shall find him out, if he has come among us, and I mean to crush him utterly, if he has shown his face. He starts for the bed. Rebecca, will it hurt the child, sir? Hale, I cannot tell. If she is truly in the devil's grip, we may have to rip and tear to get her free. That sounds ominous. It's pretty ominous right there. Rebecca, I think I'll go then. I'm too old for this. She rises. Paris, striving for conviction. Why, Rebecca, we may open up the boil of all our troubles today. Rebecca, let us hope for that. I go to God for you, sir. I mean, she's going to go pray for them. All right. Paris, with trepidation and resentment. I hope you do not mean we go to Satan here. Slight pause. Rebecca, I wish I knew. She goes out. They feel resentful of her note of moral superiority. So she's kind of veiledly saying that this is all nonsense. I don't trust this. So they are angry at her for not trusting this, not trusting the witch investigation too much. Putnam, abruptly, come, Mr. Hale, let's get on. Sit you here. Giles, Mr. Hale, I have always wanted to ask a learned man, what signifies the reading of strange books? Hale, what books? Giles, I cannot tell. She hides them. Hale, who does this? Giles, Martha, my wife. I have waked at night many a time and found her in a corner reading of a book. Now, what do you make of that? Hale, why, that's not necessarily... Giles, it discomfits me. Last night, mark this, I tried and could not say my prayers. And then she closes her book and walks out of the house, and suddenly, mark this, I could pray again. So Giles, the older man, is saying that because his wife reads books in bed, maybe it's evil. Maybe it's witchcraft. Reading books in bed. Yeah, everything's witchcraft now. Everything. If you stub your toe, it's witchcraft. Back to the narrator, who loves to hear himself talk. Old Giles must be spoken for, if only because his fate was to be so remarkable and so different from that of all the others. He was in his early 80s at this time. Lived that long in that age. And was the most comical hero in the history. No man has ever been blamed for so much. If a cow was missed, the first thought was to look for her around Corey's house. Giles Corey. A fire blazing up at night brought suspicion of arson to his door. He didn't give a hoot for public opinion, and only in his last years, after he had married Martha, did he bother much with the church. That she stopped his prayer is very probable, but he forgot to say that he'd only recently learned any prayers, and it didn't take much to make him stumble over them. So he just learned these prayers, and he's forgetting them now because he's, one, in his 80s, and two, just learned them. 3, any interruption throws him off his game. But he's like, nah, it's the reading books. Witchcraft, maybe. He was a crank and a nuisance, but withal deeply innocent and brave man. In court once, he was asked if it were true that he had been frightened by the strange behavior of a hog, and had then said that he knew it to be the devil's. The devil was in the animal's shape. What frightened you, he asked. He forgot everything but the word frightened, and instantly replied, I do not know that I ever spoke that word in my life. Interesting. Back to the play. Hail, the stoppage of prayer, that is strange. I'll speak further on that with you. Giles, I'm not saying she's touched the devil now, but I'd admire to know what books she reads and why she hides them. She'll not answer me, you see. Hail, I will discuss it to all. Now mark me, if the devil is in her, you will witness some frightful wonders in this room. So please to keep your wits about you. Mr. Putnam, stand close in the case she now flies. So they're expecting that she might actually fly here, if she's possessed. Now, Betty, dear, will you sit up? Putnam comes in closer, ready-handed. Hale sits Betty up, but she hangs limp in his hands. He observes her carefully. The others watch breathlessly. Can you hear me? I am John Hale, Minister of Beverly. I have come to help you, dear. Do you remember my 2 little girls in Beverly? She does not stir in his hands. Paris in fright. How can it be the devil? Why would he choose my house to strike? We have all manner of licentious people in the village. Hale, what victory would the devil have to win a soul already bad? It is the best the devil wants. And who is better than the minister? So let's see, there's always a way to logic out any accusation that they can come up with. There's always a reasoning they can come up with for these things. Giles, that's deep, Mr. Paris. Deep, deep. Paris with resolution now. Betty, answer me. Hale, answer Mr. Hale. Betty? Hale, does someone afflict you, child? It need not be a woman, mind you, or a man. Perhaps some bird invisible to others comes to you. Perhaps a pig, a mouse, or any beast at all. Is there some figure bids you fly? The child remains limp in his hands, is silent. He lays her back on the pillow, now holding out his hands toward her, he intones, In nomine Domini Sabaoth sui filique, ite ad infernos. Latin. She does not stir. He turns to Abigail, his eyes narrowing. Abigail, what sort of dancing were you doing with her in the forest? I'm going to guess it wasn't the tango. Abigail, why, common dancing is all. What is common dancing in a society that doesn't dance, I wonder? Paris, I think I ought to say that I saw a kettle in the grass where they were dancing. Abigail, that were only soup. I always have soup when I dance. Yeah, sure. Hale, what sort of soup were in this kettle, Abigail? Must be evil soup. Abigail, why, it were beans and lentils, I think, and... Hale, Mr. Paris, you did not notice, did you, any living thing in the kettle? A mouse, perhaps? A spider? A frog? Paris, fearfully, I do believe there were some movement in the soup. Abigail, that jumped in. We never put it in. Abigail's story changes all the time. Hale, quickly, what jumped in? Abigail, why, a very little frog jumped in. Paris, a frog? Hale, grasping Abigail. Abigail, it may be your cousin is dying. Did you call the devil last night? Abigail, I never called him. Tituba, Tituba. Paris blanched. Did she call the devil? Hale, I should like to speak to Tituba. Paris, Goody Ann, will you bring her up? Mrs. Putnam exits. Hale, how did she call him? I want to make a joke about calling collect here, but it's probably not appropriate. And you guys probably have no idea what calling collect is. Look it up. Hale, how did she call him? Abigail, I know not. She spoke Barbados, whatever the language of Barbados is. Hale, did you feel any strangeness when she called him? A sudden cold wind, perhaps? A trembling below the ground? Abigail, I didn't see no devil. Shaking Betty. Betty, wake up. Betty, Betty. Hale, you cannot evade me, Abigail. Did your cousin drink any of the brew in that kettle? The evil frog bean soup. Abigail, she never drank it. Hale, did you drink it? Abigail, no, sir. Hale, did Tituba ask you to drink it? Abigail, she tried, but I refused. Hale, what are you concealing? Have you sold yourself to Lucifer? Abigail, I never sold myself. I'm a good girl. I'm a proper girl. Because, if you eat frog and bean soup, you're from the devil. So here's that. I think I'm just going to avoid eating frog entirely. Then I'll be safe. I'm a little jumpy at the idea of eating frog. Yeah, a little jumpy. Mrs. Putnam enters with Tituba, and instantly Abigail points to Tituba. Abigail, she made me do it. She made Betty do it. Notice she's now passing the blame to Tituba, the family slave. Yeah, Abigail's going to pass the blame anywhere she can. Tituba, shocked and angry. Abby. Abigail, she made me drink blood. Paris, blood? Mrs. Putnam, my baby's blood? She blames everyone for her miscarriages. Everything has to do with her miscarriages for some reason. Tituba, no, chicken blood. That's how you get salmonella. I give she chicken blood. Hale, woman, what? Have you enlisted these children for the devil? Tituba, no, sir, I don't truck with no devil. Hale, why can she not wake? Are you silencing this child? Tituba, I love me Betty. Hale, you have sent your spirit out upon this child, have you not? Are you gathering souls for the devil? Abigail, she sends her spirit on me in church. She makes me laugh at prayer. So this is interesting. Abigail is admitting that she laughs in church at the prayer time. Now, considering Abigail doesn't seem to take any of this seriously, that might just be Abigail herself, but she's like, what else can I blame on other people? We're blaming witchcraft on people. We're blaming the frog bean soup on people and then sending the spirit and whatnot. Ooh, I did get caught laughing in church once. Let's blame her for that too. Let's just pile that on. Yep. Paris, she have often laughed at prayer. Could only be witchcraft, certainly. Abigail, she comes to me every night to go and drink blood. So now it's every night the drinking blood. Every night, not just the one night in the woods with the dancing and the frog soup. Tituba, you begged me to conjure. She begged me to make the charm. Abigail, don't lie. To Hale, she comes to me while I sleep. She's always making me dream corruptions. So now Abigail is blaming Tituba and witchcraft for inappropriate dreams. Won't go into details on that. Tituba, why you say that, Abby? Abigail, sometimes I wake and find myself standing in the open doorway and not a stitch on my body. I always hear her laughing in my sleep. I hear her singing her Barbados songs and tempting me with Tituba. Mr. Reverend, I never. Hale, resolved now. Tituba, I want you to wake this child. So that's all the evidence it takes. Hale, the witch expert, is now convinced that Tituba must have practiced witchcraft, must have these children bewitched, but not the show Bewitched or the movie. Hale, you most certainly do have power over this child. You will free her from it now. When did you make compact with the devil? Tituba, I don't compact with no devil. Paris, you will confess yourself, or I will take you out and whip you to your death. That's not nice. Tituba, Putnam, this woman must be hanged. She must be taken and hanged. Tituba, terrified, falls to her knees. No, don't hang Tituba. I tell him I don't desire to work for him, sir. Notice the way they're interrogating her is through threats and fear and saying, you'll be whipped or hanged if you don't confess. There's really no good out in that situation. If she just keeps saying she's innocent, they'll whip her. And if she says she's guilty, then she's lying and saying the witchcraft's real. So this type of interrogation doesn't seem like it's going to elicit truth of any kind. It's a trap. But oh well. That's how it goes. Paris, the devil? Hale, then you did see him. Tituba weeps. Now, Tituba, I know that when we bind ourselves to hell, it is very hard to break with it. We are going to help you tear yourself free. Tituba, frightened by the coming process, Mr. Reverend, I do believe somebody else is witching these children. Hale, who? Tituba, I don't know, sir, but the devil got him numerous witches. Hale, does he? He thinks it's a clue. Tituba, look into my eyes. Come, look into my eyes. She raises her eyes to his fearfully. You would be a good Christian woman, would you not, Tituba? Tituba says, I, sir, a good Christian woman. Hale says, and you love these little children? Tituba, oh yes, sir, I do. I don't desire to hurt these little children. Hale, and you love God, Tituba? Tituba, I love God with all my being. Hale, now in God's holy name. Tituba, bless him, bless him. She is rocking on her knees, sobbing in terror. Hale, and to his glory. Tituba, eternal glory, bless him, bless God. Hale, open yourself, Tituba, open yourself and let God's holy light shine on you. Tituba, oh, bless the Lord. Hale, when the devil comes to you, does he ever come with another person? And remember, they're not speaking figuratively here. They're saying when you're in the woods, does the devil walk up literally with some people with him so they can sign his book? She stares up into his face. Perhaps another person in the village, someone you know? Paris, who came with him? So now it's not a matter of if, it's who. Putnam, Sarah Good? Did you ever see Sarah Good with him or Osborne? Notice they're kind of leading the witness here. They're suggesting names that she can offer. Names that the Putnams, people they don't like, people they have grudges against. They're like, maybe you saw this person with the devil. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I can get rid of them with a accusation of witchcraft, get their land. Don't like those people anyway. So, yeah, this is not the most honest interrogation form in the world. Paris, was it a man or a woman that came with him? Tituba, man or woman? Was a woman. Paris, what woman? A woman, you said? What woman? Tituba, it was all black dark and I... So first she tries to get out of that by saying, well, I didn't see them very well. Paris, you could see him. Why could you not see her? Tituba, well, they was always talking and was always running around and carrying on. Paris, you mean out of Salem? Salem witches? Tituba, I believe so, sir, yes. So notice Tituba changed her story from nothing happened to, yeah, I saw the devil and witches, and yeah. Because in this predicament, they're going to punish her less for lying and saying, yes, there were witches, than professing her innocence over and over again. They're going to whip her if she claims she's innocent and run with it if she claims there's witches and starts naming names. This torture method, this interrogation method favors lying. It encourages it. Now Hale, Reverend Hale, takes her hand. She is surprised. Hale, Tituba, you must have no fear to tell us who they are. Do you understand? We will protect you. The devil can never overcome a minister. You know that, do you not? Tituba kisses Hale's hand. Aye, sir, I do. Hale, you have confessed yourself to witchcraft. And that speaks a wish to come to heaven's side, and we will bless you, Tituba. Tituba, deeply relieved. Oh, God bless you, Mr. Hale. Hale with rising exaltation. You are God's instrument put into our hands to discover the devil's agents among us. You are selected, Tituba. You are chosen to help us cleanse our village. So speak utterly, Tituba. Turn your back on him and face God. Face God, Tituba, and God will protect you. Tituba joining with him. Oh, God protect Tituba. Hale kindly. Who came to you with the devil? 2, 3, 4? How many? No longer a question of if, but who and how many. Tituba pants and begins rocking back and forth again, staring ahead. Tituba, there was 4. There was 4. Just going for the big number, I guess. Paris pressing in on her. Who? Their names. Suddenly, Tituba bursting out. Oh, how many times he bid me kill you, Mr. Paris. Paris, kill me? Yes, Tituba's letting out a little anger there, saying, oh yeah, the devil told me to kill you, by the way. Yeah, he said that, not me. Tituba in a fury. He say Mr. Paris must be killed. Mr. Paris no goodly man. Mr. Paris mean man and no gentle man, and he bid me rise out of my bed and cut your throat. Ugh. They gasp. But I tell him, no, I don't hate that man. I don't want to kill that man. But he say, you work for me, Tituba, and I make you free. I give you pretty dress to wear, and put you way up high in the air, and you gonna fly back to Barbados. And I say, you lie, devil, you lie. And then he come up one stormy night to me and he say, look, I have white people belong to me. And I look, and there was Goody Good. That sounds like a ridiculous name, Goody Good, but remember, Goody means Mrs. So Mrs. Good, that's her last name. First name Sarah. So Paris says, Sarah Good? Tituba rocking and weeping. Aye, sir, and Goody Osborne. Mrs. Putnam. I knew it. Goody Osborne were midwife to me 3 times. I begged you, Thomas, did I not? I begged him not to call Osborne, because I feared her. My baby's always shriveled in her hands. So now they're playing into Mrs. Putnam's fear that her miscarriages came from witchcraft by listing the people that were there at the births. Hail, take courage. You must give us all their names. How can you bear to see this child suffering? Look at her, Tituba. He is indicating to Betty on the bed. Look at her God-given innocence. Her soul is so tender. We must protect her, Tituba. The devil is out and preying on her like a beast upon the flesh of the pure lamb. God will bless you for your help. Abigail rises, staring as though inspired, and cries out. So Abigail needs the spotlight here. Wants the spotlight in this whole event. Something's wrong, deeply wrong with Abigail. Just you'll see that throughout the play. It's like, oof. Abigail, I want to open myself. They turn to her, startled. She is enraptured as though she's in a pearly light. I want the light of God. I want the sweet love of Jesus. I danced with the devil. I saw him. I wrote in his book. I go back to Jesus. I kiss his hand. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. She's just rattling off names of people she doesn't like right now. Whoever she doesn't like, she's going to name them. And they're with the devil. She saw them. There's proof. Betty staring too. I saw George Jacobs with the devil. I saw Goody Howe with the devil. Notice Betty's talking all of a sudden when she sees a way to get out of trouble by naming names. Convenient. Paris. She speaks! He rushes to embrace Betty. She speaks! It's a miracle. Hail! Glory to God, it is broken. They are free! Betty calling out hysterically with great relief. I saw Martha Bellows with the devil. Abigail. I saw Goody Sibber with the devil. It is rising to a great glee. Glee is probably not the emotion you should have right now in this situation. They are loving this attention, loving naming names, the power of naming names that will be condemned at their very word. Yeah, creepy. Putnam. The marshal. I'll call the marshal. Paris is shouting a prayer of thanksgiving. Betty. I saw Alice Barrow with the devil. The curtain begins to fall because it's a play. Hail as Putnam goes out. Let the marshal bring irons. Abigail. I saw Goody Hawkins with the devil. Betty. I saw Goody Bibber with the devil. Abigail. I saw Goody Booth with the devil. On their ecstatic cries, the curtain falls. So that's the end of Act 1. And at this point, you should be able to answer all of the Week 2 study guide questions, all of those. Go back through, make sure you've done that. Yeah, see, in this situation, it's interesting. They don't seem to consider the possibility that these kids are lying. It's like kids lying is not even on the table because they don't understand why an adult would lie in the situation. Therefore, they don't understand why a kid or a teenager would ever lie in the situation for attention or to get out of trouble or because there's nothing better to do in town, apparently, because dancing is illegal, too. All of a sudden, they've got the spotlight. They've got the attention of the entire town. They have the power where they had none before. And that could be a big motivator to make things up. Yes. But go ahead and make sure to finish up that study guide. And We'll see you again with the video for Act 2, assuming that this video helps. If it does, then we'll continue these videos, and if not, then we might not. But take care, and happy reading.